We Zion base. Women slaves and minors are excluded from Zimun and from the quality from Zimun, and an olive size, Rabbi Judah says, size of a beta. How do they say? How do they say the common grace? When three, one says, "Let us bless." When there are three besides him, he says, "Bless." If ten, let us bless, give blessing to our Lord. When ten beside him, bless, whether ten or 10 times 10,000. With 100, he says, "Let us bless the Lord our God." With 100 beside him, he says, "Bless." When 1,000 have eaten, he says, "Let us bless the Lord our God, the Lord of Israel." When there are 1,000 beside himself, he says, "Bless." With 10,000 men, he says, "Let us bless the Lord our God, the God of Israel, the God of hosts." Whoever sits between the cherubim, and for the food we have eaten, when there are 10,000 beside him, he says, "Bless you." After the manner that he blesses, so do they answer after him, "Blessed be the Lord our God, the God of
I
Israel,"
thought,
who sits
I thought,
between
I
the
thought you
cherubim.
were saying that I might have sneezed. Okay, never mind.
Oh, who sits between the cherubim for the food we have eaten. Rabbi Yossi the Galilean says, according to the multitude of the congregation, so do they bless us. It is said, God bless in full assemblies, even the Lord that you are for the fountain of Israel. Rabbi Akiva said, what do we find in the synagogue? Whether there are many of few or few, one says, bless the Lord. Rabbi Ismail says, blessed be the Lord who is blessed. And the next one, see? If three have eaten together, they are not allowed to separate. And if they are four or five, six may separate up to 10, but 10 may not separate until there are 20. Okay.
Okay. Now, שתי חבורות שהיו אוכלות בבית אחת. אחד. If they're sitting, if you have two groups of people all both sitting under one roof, but this could be a sort of a Sheva Brachas scenario, I guess. Um, Okay. You got a lot of people and not enough space to everyone to get everyone into the same room.
Mhm.
בזמן שמקצתן רואים אלו es אלו, הרי אלו מצטרפים לזימון. So if some of the one group can look through the doorway into the next room and see the other people eating there, that joins together for the zimon, and they can bench together. ואם לאו, אלו מזמנים לעצמם ואלו מזמנים לעצמם. So if they're in completely separate places where nobody from one group can see anyone from the other group, um, then they're separate futzot.
Mhm.
Except except if there is a situation, is that explicit or was it in the commentary? Um, no, so if there's in the Gemara brings that if there's the same waiter serving both tables, then the waiter joins them together. So if you have that situation for your Sheva Brachas, make sure you've got a waiter who's serving both sides, um, and then they can join in as well. Okay. Um, ואין מברכין על היין עד שייתן לסוך המים. Now, a completely context switch over here. Yeah, when you're having wine, and perhaps we're mentioning it, agav the fact that people often will bench over a cup of wine, but you can't make a bracha on the wine, says Rabbi Eliezer, until it's been diluted, because the wine in the time of the Mishnah was a strong wine. I guess they kept it, perhaps for storage purposes, they kept it in a concentrated form, and then they would have to dilute it later. So you can't. So says Rabbi Eliezer, you cannot make a bracha on it until you've diluted it. No, no, you can. But Chachamim agree with Rabbi Eliezer when it comes to the kos shel bracha, when you're making kiddush or benching on it. There they agree that it has to be a proper kos shel bracha, and it has to be diluted before you're allowed to make a bracha on it. Okay. All right. Now, Perik Ches is a whole compendium of halachas relating to the Suda, where there's a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. אלו דברים שבין בייס שמאי ובייס הלל בסעודה. בייס שמאי אומרים מברך על היום ואחר כך מברך על היין. So making Kiddush on Shabbos, Friday night. So according to Beis Shammai, the first thing you do is make the whole bracha on Mekadesh Shabbos, and afterwards you say Borei Pri Hagafen. Beis Hillel omrim mevarech al hayayin v'achar kach mevarech al hayom. First you bless the wine, and then you do the Kiddush.
Okay.
Okay, and the reasoning for Beis Hillel is because the wine or if you're making kiddush on bread, is what that is what's mechayev you in the kiddush. The fact
Yeah.
that you're sitting down to a suda now, that if you didn't have a suda, you wouldn't be able to make kiddush. So having a suda is the what's mechayev the kiddush, and therefore you make the barek ragafin first, and then only afterwards you make the
Okay.
sale on the day. Okay. Beis Shammai
Okay.
Beis Shammai omrim notlim leyadayim v'achar kach mozgin is hakos. So what's the order according to Beis Shammai? First, do Natilas Yadayim, then make your then you pour the cup of wine and make kiddush and hamotzi and run straight on into hamotzi. Beis Hillel omrim mozgin is hakos v'achar kach notim leyadayim. First, do your kiddush, and then you wash hands. Now, what's the basis of the machlokes over here? The basis is over here talking is about tuma and tara. Okay, now having just come out of the whole section of taros of seder taros, we understand that if you have liquid is liquid. If your hands are tame, which they are by default,
Mhm.
and you touch the liquid gets elevated to a rishon and is matame the cup.
Oh,
Okay, so Beis Shammai Dafka wants you to wash your hands and have your hands tahor before you touch the outside of the cup in case some of the wine, you've got a nice full cup of wine and a bit leaks over the edge, and now your hand touches the wine that's on the edge, and then it's on the cup, and the cup becomes tame, and then you got a problem. Beis Hillel say even if that happens, the only thing that'll become tame is the outside of the cup. The inside doesn't become tame from the liquid, and that we learned in Kalim. That's a possibility that only the outside of the cup will become tame from the liquid. Okay, if it we will just to refresh you in Kalim, we said that when you've got a clear outside and inside of a kli, um, if the outside becomes tame, then only the outside becomes tame and not the inside. But if the inside becomes tame, then everything becomes tame. Okay.
yeah.
So Beis Hillel are not concerned about that. Rather, what they say is that you should first okay, why Dafka go in this direction? First pour the cup. Um, wait, where's Beis Hillel סוברים, מותר להשתמש בכוס שאחריו טמאים, ולכן אם ייטול ידיו תחילה יש חשש. But so there's a chashash that if you did Natilas Yadayim first, there's a chashash that maybe your hands will not be properly dried from the Natila, and that and therefore the liquid that's on his hands will become tame from the outside of the cup, because it's already mutar to have a cup that's tame on the outside for kiddush. So now they're concerned in the other direction, that your hands are going to become tame from the cup, not that the cup's going to become tame from your hands. So that's why they say leave the hands until last. Okay.
There's a thing that Yekers do. The
Yes.
German Jews, they do it
That's
the
right.
opposite
They
way.
do they wash, make kiddush and go straight into amoti like Beis Shammai. Correct.
Okay. Okay. Daled Aleph. The tefillah of the morning until noon, Rabbi Yehuda says till 4 hours of the day. The mincha tefillah until the evening, and Rabbi Yehuda says until midway through the mincha. The evening tefillah is not fixed, and the musaf all day. Rabbi Yehuda says until the seventh hour. When Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana would enter the base midrash and depart, he would offer a short prayer. They asked him, what place is there for this prayer? And he said to them, when entering, I pray that no stumbling block should arise through me. And when I leave, I give thanks for my lot. Rabbi Gamil says every person is obligated to write Shemona Esrei daily. Rabbi Yeshua says a digest of Shemona Esrei. Rabbi Akiva says if his prayer is fluent in his mouth, he recites Shemona Esrei, and if not, a digest of the 18. Okay. Right.
Okay.
And we are on to Yom. Okay, base Aleph. Liquids that emanate from a table yom are like liquids that he touches. Both these liquids and those liquids do not render foods tame. And with respect to all the other sources of tuma, whether they are tummy to a like degree or to severe degree, liquids that emanate from them are like liquids that touch them. Both these liquids and those liquids are considered the beginning of a level of tuma, with the exception of the liquid of an avatuma. Considering a pot that is full of liquids and was touched by a double yolk, if the liquid of tuma was, if the liquid, if the liquid was of teruma, the liquid is disqualified. But if the pot is tahor, but if it was a liquid of kulin, everything is tahor. But if his hands were unclean, everything is tameh. This is a stringency that applies to unclean hands over a tel yom. There's also a stringency that applies to a tel yom over unclean hands. While an uncertainty concerning a tel yom renders truma pasul, an uncertainty concerning unclean hands is considered tahor. Concerning a porridge made of truma and the garlic and the oil of kulin, if a tevel yom touch part of them, it is rendered all of them puzzle. If the porridge was of kulan and the garlic and the oil were of truma, and the tevel yom touch part of them, he has rendered puzzle only the place of his touch. Excuse me. If the garlic was the majority, we follow the majority. Rabbi Yehuda says when they form a mass in the bowl. But if it was separated in the mortar, it is tahor since he wants its separation. And the same applies to all other pounded foods if they were pounded with beverages. But concerning those foods that are normally pounded with beverages, if he pounded them without beverages, even if they are a mass in a bowl, they're treated like a round cake of pressed figs.
Okay.
Uh,
Taurus. Sein.
if one place is closed in a cubbyhole, the bathhouse attendants, Uh, the Reb Elazar ben Azariah rules that they are tahor, but the sages say until he gives them the key or seal, until he makes the sign. If one leaves his utensils in this wine pressing season to the coming wine pressing season, his utensils are tahor, and with an Israelite until he says, "I had mine to guard them." If someone was tahor and diverted his attention from eating, Rabbi Yehuda rules him tahor since it was the way of Tamei people to separate from him, but the common rules him Tamei. If his hands were tahor and he diverted his attention from eating, even though he said, "I know that my hands have not become contaminated," his hands are Tamei because the person's hands are active. If a woman entered her home, though, in order to bring out bread to a poor man, and she went out and found him standing next to loaves of truma, and similarly, if a woman went out and found her friends stirring coals under a pot of truma, Reb Akiva rules the Tameh while the sages rule Tahor. Reb Eliezer ben Pila said, why does Reb Akiva rule the Tameh when the sages rule the Tahor? Because women are gluttonous, and she is suspected of uncovering the pot of a friend in order to know what she is cooking.
Okay.
Okay.
No, first Medos.
Okay. Okay. Aleph. The Kohanim would stand guard in the three places of the Holy Temple, in the chamber of Avitanus, in the chamber of the Ray, and the hall of the fire. When the Levium would stand guard in 21 places, five Levium at the five gateways of the Temple Mount, four Levium at the four corners of the Temple Mount walls. On the inside, I'm sorry, on the inside, five Levium at the five gateways of the Temple courtyard, four Levium at its four corners on the outside, and one Levi in the chamber of the offering, and one Levi in the chamber of the curtain, and one Levi behind the chamber of the ark cover. The offer of the temple mount would make the rounds to each and every guard, and torches were lit before him. And any guard who did not stand, the officer of the temple would say to him, "Peace unto you." If it was apparent that he was sleeping, the officer would strike him with his staff, and also had permission to burn his garment. And they would say, "What is the noise in the courtyard? It must be the sound of a Levi being beaten and his clothing being burned, because he fell asleep on his watch." If Eliezer ben Yaakov says, "One time they found my mother's brother sleeping on his watch, and they burned his garment." The Temple Mount had five gateways. The two Golden gates in the south were used for entering and exiting. Tipiros in the west was used for entering and exiting. Tadi in the north was not used for any purpose. The eastern gate upon it was depicted a likeness of Shushan, the capital of city of Persia, that through it the Kohen Gadol was to burn the Parah Duma, and the Parah itself and all the others existing the Parah were accepted to the Mount of Olives. There
Okay.
were seven.
No, that's
There
it.
was
Yeah.
Okay, now we have see and we have hey. A person may say to another, "Weed with me, and I will weed with you," or "Hoe with me, and I will hoe with you." But he may not say to him, "Weed with me, and I will hoe with you," or "Hoe with me, and I will weed with you." All the days of the dry season are alike, and all the days of the rainy season are alike. However, he may not say to him, plow with me during the dry season, and I will plow with you during the rainy season. Rabbi Gamil says there is an interest paid in advance and there is interest paid afterwards. How? If he decided to borrow from him and he sent to him and said, I am doing so in order that you lend me, this is an interest paid in advance. And if he borrowed from him and returned his money to him and sent to him and he said, this is because of your money that was lying idle with me, this is interest paid afterwards. Reb Shimon says there is interest with words, and he may not say to him, be informed that so and so has come from such and such a place. The following transgression is a negative commandment: the lender, the borrower, the guarantor, and the witnesses. And the sages say, even the scribe, they transgress. You shall not give. You shall not give. You shall not take from him, and you shall not be to him as a creditor. You shall not impose interest upon him, and before a blind man you shall not place a stumbling block, and you shall fear your God. I am Hashem. If one might hires craftsmen and they mislead one another, they have nothing but resentment against one another. If he hired a monkey driver or a wagon driver to bring wood for a litter or flutes for a bride, or for a dead person, or laborers to remove his flock from the steeping waters, or anything which may cause a loss, and they retracted, in a place where there are no people, he may hire other workers in addition to them, or district them.
Okay.
Okay, Zion Yud Gimel. If two groups are eating in the same house, one group may turn in one direction and eat, and then the other group may turn in another direction and eat, and with the kettle between them. When the waiter stands up to mix the wine, he must close his mouth and turn his face until he gets back to his own group, and then he eats. And the bride may turn away her face and eat. A woman, during the time she resides in her husband's house, if her husband slaughtered a Pesach on her behalf, and her father slaughtered a Pesach on her behalf, she eats from the Pesach of her husband. If she went to spend the first festival at her father's house, and her father slaughtered on her behalf, and the husband slaughtered on her behalf, she may eat in whichever place she desires. An orphan whom guardian slaughtered may eat in whichever place she desires. A slave belonging to two partners may not eat from either of them. One who is half slave and half free may not eat from his masters. And one who says to his slave, go out and slaughter the Pesach offering for me. If he slaughtered a kid, he may eat of it. If he slaughtered a lamb, he may eat of it. And if he slaughtered both a kid and a lamb, he must eat of the first. If he forgot what his master told him, what should he do? Let him slaughter a lamb and a kid and say, if my master told me to slaughter a kid, let the kid be his, and if the lamb, mine. And if his master told me to slaughter a lamb, let the lamb be his and the kid mine. If his master forgot what he had told him, both go forth to the place of burning, and they are exempt from participating in the second Pesach.
Okay.
All right.
That's
I like your video you sent me. I do.